No! Hey YouTube, what are you doing? Put the cookie down, now! Or you'll never look like this man right here, Shawn Ray. Hey guys, what's up? It's the Tominator. Today I wanted to share with you what I believe personally to be one of the best bodybuilding performances of all time. Arguably the best physique ever achieved by a human being, at least as far as bodybuilding standards are concerned. The other would be, of course, Flex Wheeler in 1993, either the Olympia or the Arnold. Take your pick. He was fantastic, both those shows. But aside from that, Shawn Ray in 1999 was equally impressive to me, equally perfect in terms of his aestheticism, his shape, his symmetry, his proportions, his overall development. His conditioning was just spot on. Everything was great. Now, the only thing he was really giving up this year to anybody was size. And that's probably the main reason why he placed 5th, if you believe it. After you see this footage, you'll probably be scratching your head on that one. I know I was. But he was giving up a fair amount of mass compared to his competitors, because at this point, the mass monster era was kind of in full flight. And smaller guys like Shawn just really couldn't measure up as far as the judges were concerned. They were just too preoccupied with the size factor. But when you see him on his own, when he's not standing next to other guys and getting out-muscled, he's just the perfect physical specimen. So let's get into this. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. I mean, look at his posing already, just so graceful. You just don't see that these days. And the bicep here, crazy, like it inserts all the way into his elbow, for God's sake. He just has very gifted muscle bellies, very tight, thin skin, reminiscent of the current Mr. Phil Heath in that regard. And he even has a similar coloring, a similar skin tone to Phil. I remember King Kamali mentioning when Phil won his first Mr. Olympia, King Kamali was doing the announcing that year, and he compared Phil to a bigger, better version of Shawn Ray. And I got a bit of a beef with that claim right there. Bigger, sure. Better, I don't think so. In my opinion, personally, I prefer Shawn. I feel like he's overall more shapely and more aesthetic than Phil ever has been. Phil's got mass on him, sure, and he's got some more outstanding body parts, namely his triceps and his forearms, which Ray can't really match. But the thing with Phil is that Phil kind of suffers in a lot of poses. He doesn't look the best in certain poses. Like the front lat spread, he doesn't look very good in. The ab and thigh, he looks a little bit awkward in my opinion. Even in recent years, I don't really like his front double bicep that much. So the thing with Shawn is he looked great in every pose. He didn't really have any weaknesses. So let's keep going. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. You try and pick apart this guy and tell me what his weaknesses are, because he really doesn't have any. You can see the level of detail. Look at this pose right here. Could anybody today even hit this properly? I don't think so, because you got to have a tight midsection for this, and Shawn pretty much had perfect abs, and one of, if not the best sets of abs in the history of the sport, in my opinion. And, just his balance, his shape was second to none, really. And the beauty of this footage here is that they do a lot of close-up shots, so you can really capture all the details, because the quality's not the best, but he was super defined and extremely vascular this year, which is kind of unusual for a more aesthetic guy to have that level of vascularity that Shawn was bringing. But if anything, it kind of adds to his overall impressiveness. Makes him look even more defined. Like, look, even through the back there, I don't know if you caught that, but he had vascularity in his freaking back, which is highly unusual. This pose right here was just legendary. I don't know what you would call this. I guess it's kind of a modified variation of a most muscular, but super impressive. Look at the vascularity through his arms. It's crazy. Oh, there he goes. So I didn't even freeze it at the right moment, because look at all the striations popping out in his chest right now. His abs are coming into play a little more. This is just, in my opinion, like, man, even Flex Wheeler couldn't hit this pose as good as this. Even in 1993, he wouldn't have looked as impressive. He didn't have that level of vascularity like Shawn did here. But both these guys had just crazy cartoon-like muscle. They both looked like comic book superheroes come to life because, you know, just the shape and the proportion, the symmetry, the aesthetics. It was really almost like unrealistic, if you get what I'm saying. Now, look at this front lat spread here. In my opinion, this is just so much better than, say, Phil's. You know, he really kind of fills it out better. He doesn't look as scrunched up, and he's got greater relative width through the shoulders in comparison to his very tapered waist. And you can see the quads, like he's pointing his feet out a little bit, but you can see to accentuate it, but you can see the quad sweep there, really bringing out that X frame. He just looks very impressive. Like, he doesn't have any weak poses. And even his transitions and everything in between poses are very graceful and artistic. Like this here. Just incredible. Now, you can see like his glutes are a little bit soft and smooth. That's probably one thing you could nick him for or ding him for, but again, man, fuck the glutes. Who cares? Like, he's perfect everywhere else. Do we really need to be analyzing a man's ass and, oh no, his glutes aren't shredded enough? Go cry me a river, man. He's pretty much perfect everywhere else you look, so if that's the one weak point he's going to have, okay, I'm fine by that. I really don't think that body part should be so heavily emphasized, but hey, what you gonna do? That's just me. Too bad we didn't get a head-on shot of that lat spread there, but now he's gonna, look at the striations in his quads and everything. He's gonna hit this one again. Look at that, man. Are you kidding me? He's got vascularity everywhere, like shoulders, arms, forearms, traps even. It's so much detail. You just don't see this level of definition today. You simply don't. Now, I'm not sure if it's, you know, if it's just the fact that these guys aren't as ripped. I don't really think that that's it. Because I remember hearing Jay Cutler in one of his videos, I think it was during his Olympia reign, around like 2010, 2011, somewhere in there, where he was doing a lot of YouTube videos and stuff. And he mentioned that, you know, when you get to a certain size, if you continue to just put on more and more mass, the details kind of get, not washed out, but they just kind of, you just kind of lose them in all the thickness in the muscle. So you can't see as much definition throughout the muscles. If that makes any sense. I kind of think that has to be the case, because the guys today, you know, even when they're super conditioned, you just don't see details like these. You just don't see it. I mean, you don't see this level of striations going on in the chest. You don't, like, you can kind of see almost individual muscle fibers on this guy. It's just crazy. And if you go back in time to when guys were even smaller, it pops out at you even more. Like, yeah, they were smaller, but their muscles look so much more detailed and defined than they do today. Now, Ray doesn't have that kind of, like, balloonish type muscle that, say, Phil does. You know, he doesn't have that. It doesn't look like his muscles have been pumped up or inflated with an air pump or anything. But he's still extremely gifted when it comes to the muscle bellies and the roundness of his muscles. And it really shows in the pose like that. Just everything about this guy. He really knew how to hit poses. Look at this side chest, just perfect. You know, by today's standards, yeah, those legs aren't quite up to par. They're a little bit undersized. They're lacking in sweep. They're lacking in, you know, clear definition, like a clear separation between the glutes and the hams and the quads, etc. But look at the upper body, man. It's, in my opinion, this is pretty much perfect. Again, you know, by today's standards, that chest is looking a little flat. It's not quite thick enough, but man, can we just appreciate the shape, the condition, the aesthetic appeal of this guy? Look at the midsection too. It's just perfect. And he really knew how to showcase it too, like to highlight his aesthetic appeal by hitting all these artistic poses. Look at the arm, looks gargantuan there. It's all about angles. The bodybuilding is really an illusion, right? Look at this pose. Very cool. And one of the most perfect ab and thighs you'll ever see. Look at the striations in the quad. Even the legs look massive, man. Like, he really couldn't bring anything up without bringing everything else up because the proportions are perfect. So if he put on size to his legs, he'd have to put on size to the whole rest of his body. Because, you know, adding mass to any one body part is going to kind of bring it out of proportion. And the thing is, you know, when you're 3 or 4 or even 2 inches shorter than most of your competitors, because Shawn was only 5'7", there's really only so much you can do as far as keeping up in terms of the mass game. You know, for him to come in at like 220 would be the equivalent of Ronnie coming in at like 250, because Ronnie's got like 3.5 inches on him or whatever. So it's kind of like these guys who are shorter are really at a disadvantage when it comes to the size game. Dexter's another guy who, you know, Dexter's even shorter than Shawn Ray, if I do recall correctly. He's only 5'6", whereas Shawn was 5'7". And you can see it there too. Like, Dexter just cannot box with these guys in terms of the size game. He can't hang with guys like Big Ramy or Jay Cutler, you know, because he's given up too much in terms of height. And when you're shorter, everything's going to be smaller, you know. Your limbs are going to be shorter, so you're not going to have the ability to put on as much mass. So, and when you put on, if you're a shorter guy and you pack on a lot of mass, like Branch Warren did, it kind of throws off your aesthetics. So you can only gain so much muscle before it starts to throw off everything else. Look at that perfect ab and thigh shot. Like I said, you know, I just don't even see a weak pose on this guy. Highly, highly underrated. Everyone always talks about Flex in 93, but Shawn in 1999 was kind of the second coming of that, in my opinion. One of my favorite physiques of all time. Look at the streamlined waist. Like, can any guy hit this pose today? Anybody? Like, I think Cedric's done stuff like this, but he's not going to hit it as effectively as Ray did because, let's face it, he's not as gifted in terms of the shape. He's not as strong of a poser, and he doesn't have a waistline as streamlined as what Ray has here. Even though, you know, I do applaud Cedric. I'm not bashing him or anything. You know, I think we need more stuff like that. More guys need to try to at least achieve this level of, you know, sculpture-esque posing, if you will. This is almost like Frank Zane 2.0, you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of a lost art in bodybuilding, the artistic posing, the classical posing. And I wish more guys would at least attempt it. But you're going to be pretty hard-pressed to beat Ray. And that's the end of the routine. So, what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, I'm the Tominator, and I'll be back.